What's up, everyone? Darkscream 217 here, and I know I've been putting it off for a very long time, but finally here it is. My big manga vlog on what could possibly be my favorite series to read so far is Maho Sensei Negima, or Negima Magister Negi Magi, as it's translated here in the States. And it's not really a review per se because, I don't feel like rereading the whole thing from start to finish. It's more about me just talking about it. I mean, my experiences with the manga date back to 2006, so that's a good 7 years of stuff I have to pull back with my memory. And it's 38 volumes. It's pretty freaking long, and if I were to start from the beginning and read from start to finish, this video would have been delayed till 2014. But I want this video out before the end of the year. Because I promised that, and there were some people that were looking forward to it, and I have been slacking off lately for other reasons, mostly gaming, Grand Theft Auto 5. But here it is. This is just me talking about the manga. There will be some spoilers. There will be stuff I'll talk about that I like, some characters I like. I'll try to give out some basic plot premises. And as a manga, can I recommend this to other people? Well, it is really good. I mean, it didn't start off very strong, and when I heard about this series originally, I did not really care for it much. Not to mention, this is made by Ken Akamatsu, who also created Love Hina, and he does a lot of ecchi fanservice things, especially with harems, which is what Negima is, or at least most of it was. And it's a lot to fucking stomach down, but if you can overlook all that shit, it is a really good quality series, which is why I managed to stay on the board from start to finish about this manga. I mean, if you want to give it a try, if you haven't read it yet, then I suggest just not listening anymore to this vlog, because like I said, there will be some spoilers, and I'm even going to make a separate video talking about the ending because there's been some controversy surrounding it. But if you already read and finished Negima, or if me talking about this extensively would probably get you to motivate you to check it out yourself, then please feel free to listen to the rest of this video. Now that's out of the way, Negima, what the hell is it? Well, I've heard about this, back in 2006 from a friend of mine in high school. And him and his group of friends were into the anime series Love Hina. I was not. This was before I actually checked out Love Hina and started, thinking, wow, this is as bad as Aiko Arisaka pointed out. Yeah, like I said, at the time I didn't care about Love Hina. I was still in my Slayers kick. I was actually watching back then it was the final season, Slayers Try. I was just getting into that still. And they were talking about Love Hina and having conversations, whatever. I didn't care much. I mean, I've seen some AMVs of it prior to it, and I'm just like, alright, dude gets punched all over the place into orbit for doing accidental perverted things. Yeah, even when I was like a teenager going into adulthood, I thought, no. But then he brought up this one particular manga series during one lunch break. He said originally he pronounced it as Nejima, as a Neji from Naruto, but there's a G in there, and looking up some dub translation and stuff, it does translate to Negi. He said, when I heard the premise, he's like, okay, a 10-year-old boy prodigy wizard dude goes to attend a school in Japan as an English teacher for a bunch of middle schoolers who are all female. And when I heard about that, I'm like, okay, I guess. Whatever. And this guy I'm talking about, he is a smart dude. I respect him a lot. I still do. I mean, he and I haven't really seen each other after high school graduation. He and I used to be co-workers as a similar job, and he was a pretty straight dude, whatever. And I knew the guy had taste, but he really wasn't selling me on this premise. And back then, I didn't find out that it was made by Ken Akamatsu until another friend he managed to motivate to checking the series out. He's like, dude, that was written by that Negima you told me about. That was written by Ken Akamatsu. I'm like, oh great, more of Akamatsu shit. Okay, but one day, out of boredom and curiosity, I checked out the anime on YouTube, back when YouTube wasn't so strict with the copyrights and stuff, back when fan subs are freely uploaded there all the time. Even though I was told not to check out the anime, only because the opening scene sucked, and he didn't mention anything else about it, but when I watched the first few episodes, I was like, okay, alright, it's another harem. This was back when I didn't hate, where harem hate, I wasn't aware of a huge harem hate anyways, but I was checking out, trying to get myself into it. I don't know why. I mean, I thought I would learn my lesson about the Naruto bullshit, but, you know, my friends were into the series, and, you know, maybe it's because I wanted to be part of a conversation or something. I don't know. Like, I checked a few episodes out on YouTube. They weren't that great, but I don't remember what was keeping me hooked in. It's probably the fact that this is the first harem I've seen with that abundant of a cast. One teacher, and it's not 15 students or 16 or 18 or even 20. They managed to cram in 31 characters, and that's just class 2A / class 3A of Mahora Academy. There's a bunch of side characters who get a lot of mainstay power as the manga progresses and stuff. But I checked the first few episodes, and I was like, okay. I think the episode I last left off on was episode 5. They were teasing at the upcoming story arc. Which I thought was stupid, because the idea of just a harem comedy shifting into an action series, I actually had this conversation with my friends back in high school, and at first I thought that was dumb, but then I realized Tenchi was the same way. It was a harem comedy, but it also had a lot of sci-fi action sequences that nobody really likes to talk about. Like, the whole Kagato arc in both Tenchi Universe and Tenchi Muyo, I really loved. They also had a villain named Dr. Clay, who shows up with a not evil, but a Ryoko clone, to try to kidnap Washu and stuff. And, you know, all those elements, all those sci-fi elements, that's really what got me hooked into Tenchi. Yeah, the girls are nice, and they're pretty hilarious and fun and full of character, but I really like the Star Wars-ish moments in the series as much, maybe even more. So, I decided to check out the manga of Negima. Now, when I went to the bookstore, they didn't have volumes 1 and 2 up on display. Just 3 through, I want to say 12 or 13. That's how many volumes were out at the time. I decided to say, you know what, screw it. I'll pick up volumes 3, 4, 5 for now, and I'll go back to 1 and 2. And since I've watched some of the anime, and the first anime series is actually a lot closer to the manga in terms of story. Really wasn't a good adaptation, but it was the closest one to the manga, so I was pretty much up to speed on a lot of things. Now, at that same day, I actually finished watching the last few episodes of Slayer's Try, and overall, I liked it very much. And I thought, well, Slayer's I have my entire fix on, with the exception of the books to this day, because Tokyo Pop went under, and they have the rights so far. And I'm not bitter about that whatsoever. Anyways, I decided to start reading Volume 3 of Negima. And had I actually started, if I started originally on Volumes 1 and 2, I probably would have dropped it altogether. Because Volume 3 is where things actually start turning around for the better. Now, I didn't know this was going to be, I didn't realize I was reading a shonen manga until in the middle of the Mahora Festival arc. Which is a long ways go. That's like up to volume 10 or whatever. But Volume 3 is where things just it got me hooked. Um, it really did. Now, I heard from a bunch of sources on the internet. I don't know how true is this because it really is hard to find out whether or not everything is 100% accurate when you're trying to get news overseas from another country with a different language than yours. Um, I mean, I've heard I don't even know if Akira Toriyama wanted to end Dragon Ball Z at the Frieza arc to this day. I've been hearing that for years, but then Pathogeo Freed says, no, that's not true. He wanted to keep it going, blah, 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 whatever. But, according to some sources, after Ken Akamatsu was done with Love Hina, he originally wanted to try something new, something fresh, something a little that he just wanted to experiment on. He wanted to try a shonen series. Stuff like Dragon Ball Z, Bleach, Naruto, all that kind of stuff. One Piece, yeah. Now that I list off those animes, you should know what kind of genre this is. But studio executives, they were all like, no, Love Hina made us lots of money. I want you to make something just like Love Hina so you can keep making us money. So he was forced to write a harem series from what I've been told. Now, for a guy who was reluctant to do a harem series, he seems to be having a lot of fun putting a lot of really bizarre, etchy fan service moments in there. Like, there's a running gag where every time Negi sneezes, because he's his elemental affinity was wind. Every time he sneezes, like, skirts would like fly all over the place, and sometimes clothes would just get shredded. That's been a running gag from start to finish of the entire series. So yeah, it's weird. Didn't had to do had to do another harem because he just wasn't allowed to do a shonen, and he still rolls with it pretty well. So when I started reading this series by on volume 3, that where I began, the only thing I was really completely left in the dark was the whole Library Island arc that was in volume 2. But volume 3, they introduce a character, one of the students in the class, Evangeline A.K. McDowell. And she's a vampire who's been living for several centuries. And she hates Negi's dad. I mean, she used to love him once and even stalked him around. But Negi decided to ditch her, and then she got pissed. They tried to get into a fight. Negi's father puts up a trap, and then imprisons her to a Mahora Academy with some crazy school spell. And Negi's dad, who is known as the Thousand Master, Nagi Springfield, he said that once she graduates the school, the curse would be lifted, she would be free and all that stuff. Here's the kicker though. 5 years later, he dies. He's supposedly dead. And this left her really pissed off, because she would have to be stuck there forever. That was until it turns out the Thousand Master had a son, which is our main character, Negi Springfield, being a teacher in her class. Now, she thinks that if she were to drain him of his blood, the curse would be lifted. And that really hasn't been explored past that volume, but hell, I think she's trying to try whatever she can just to get the hell out of Mahora Academy. Even if it means, screwing over his son, possibly killing him, whatever. And so things get a little more action-packed. Still fan servicey, but things get really exciting. I was like, well, a villain, even though her position, it totally sucks, and it's kind of a humiliating punishment, really. But I like this character. Evangeline's actually one of my top favorite characters because of how she's like one of the few villains that progress in the series that actually not only stays like pretty badass, but it turns out she's actually more badass than she lets herself out to be. Her powers are pretty diminished at the start of this arc, but at the end, it's like revealed that she is like, again, video game breaking powerful. And I really don't say that about most vampires because I'm not really a fan of vampires in general. The only set of vampires I like are her, almost the entire cast of Hellsing, and since I'm getting into JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, I really like Dio Brando a lot just because of how fucking monstrous of a dick he was, especially one particular scene in Phantom Blood. But I don't want to talk about it because I don't want to get too sidetracked from discussing about this particular manga. Now, Evangeline even gets herself a robot assistant by the name of Chachamaru Karakuri, and that was like one of the first characters of one of the first Mahora students that really got my attention. When they show that scene in the anime where they just show a montage of all the, not montage, but all the students, almost all of them in Class 3A were in the room. And I just remember seeing this green hair girl with the weird joints around her. I'm like, you're a robot. She caught my attention the most. But it turns out, yeah, she was created by one of the scientists in the same class. I believe it was Satomi Hakase. And yeah, she serves her master, which is Evangeline. And of course, she ends up being one of the antagonists because she helps out Evangeline, but she's not really evil per se, as Negi eventually finds out because they were kind of stalking her and watching her behavior, as she's been doing nice things, including, feeding some stray kittens in some field, which conflicts Negi a little because, it's his students, and it turns out that she's not really that horrible of a person, at least not compared to Evangeline. And they also introduced the Paxio system that will just be forever used in the entirety of the manga, or probationary contract. I mentioned this in my Negima review, which for some reason is not working on my channel. I don't know how to fucking fix it. If I can't, I might just re-upload it. Anyways, the Paxio system. It's where a magician can transfer some of his or her magical energy onto another individual, and that person is to basically defend the mage when casting spells and stuff, and they are given a card as a form of contract which shows the person with the artifact. An artifact can be a weapon or support or some kind of support tool of anything. It could be a sword, it could be a giant gun, it could even be a magical book that allows you to read other people's minds. How they do this, though, the Paxio system, again, something that needs to be stomached down a little, or if you can't, then I just really can't recommend reading this, is via kiss, under a magic circle. And Negi's done that with 19 characters throughout the entirety of the series. The first person he made a Paxio with, at the end of Volume 3, was with, the female lead of the series, Asuna Kagurazaka, or Asuna, however you want to pronounce it. I always pronounce it as Asuna because because the name was spelled like Asuka, as in Asuka Soryu from Evangelion, so I just replaced the K with the N and Asuna. But anyway, I kind of did not like her at first, because she's a tsundere. And you know how I feel about tsunderes. You know how I feel about Naru from Love Hina, even though that's from the anime experience. And the manga, I actually kind of dropped mid-volume 3. Again, that's something I have to explain detail in another vlog. But yeah, she's kind of mean. She hates little kids, obviously, the whole thing with Negi. But she's also, she loves older men. She has, a hard crush on Takamichi Takahata, one of the other teachers at Mahora Academy, who is also a friend of Negi's father, and also, in the way, a friend of Negi as well. Oh, and she's not that very bright in the head, too, so a tsundere bitch and a dumbass, that's a wonderful combination. I mean, she is Baka Red of the Baka Rangers, which is, an exclusive group of Mahora 3A that are given to the lowest graded students in that class. Even though she's Baka Red, she's not categorized as the leader. The leader is Baka Black, who is Yue Ayase, which I will talk about later on in this vlog. But yeah, as a main character, I mean, she was alright, but I really wasn't liking her a whole lot because she was kind of an ass to Negi. And she, obviously, the reason why she, becomes his first partner is because she is the first person to know that Negi was a wizard. Negi was using a levitation spell because one of the other students was carrying a lot of books, and she almost fell to either a death or lethal accident of some kind. He saves her at the last minute, but he got exposed. And in this universe, magic is something of a form of secrecy, and if you get caught, you get turned into a freaking animal. So he was upset about that, and he tries to erase her memory, but for some reason she's nullified for magic. Like, nothing can directly affect her magic wise. So memory erasing spell didn't work. All that happened was that he freaking erased her clothes. Cue laugh track, I guess. Well, at the end of Volume 3, fight at the bridge. In the end, Negi won, obviously, and he even promised that he'll find a way to lift the curse for Evangeline once he becomes a Magister Magi. All that stuff. Now, Volumes 4 through 6 were the Kyoto field trip arc. Again, way back in 2006, my memory hasn't been that strong. I'm not going to remember a whole lot of things about it, though this was a really good arc. Now, you know what? I haven't even talked about Negi a whole lot, but I really should. Negi Springfield, 10-year-old from Wales, is a magician. I mentioned this before. He's a wizard, obviously. He wishes to become a Magister Magi, which is like a high-ranking, powerful mage. And the reason why he wants to be this is because a couple years ago, years prior to the events in the manga, when he was a kid, some demon attacked his village and turned everyone he knew into stone, including his cousin, who he treats as a sister, Nekane. Well, while the monster was close to attacking Negi himself, the Thousand Master showed up and saved the day, and then he just disappeared again. And Negi remembers this vividly, and so that's kind of the driving force to why he wants to be a mage. Now, after he graduated from the wizard school, he was, as part of his little trial, he was supposed to attend Mahora Academy, which is why he's where he is. Mahora Academy itself is actually a really massive school. I don't think it's an all-girls school. No, I'm pretty sure it's not, because they introduced some male characters who were like part of some judo club and stuff. I just don't know why there was like exclusive, I guess there's just an exclusive girls section or something, because the school is pretty damn massive, almost as big as the city. And obviously, because, Mahora Academy is tied to the Wizard Academies in Wales, there are other magician users in Mahora Academy. That gets shown more and more closer to the Mahora Fest arc around around volume. I think it was volume 9. They started introducing those characters. They even have like 2 MIB looking dudes in the academy too. That was pretty cool. Now, at the start of the series, he wasn't really seen by his students as teacher material. They all just saw him as this cute, adorable 10-year-old. That's about it. So, even though he's actually he's kind, he's pretty intelligent and dependable, which is one of the feats that why I actually kind of like him as a character. And like most ongoing series, he becomes more and more badass. Now, volumes 4 through 6, the Kyoto field trip arc. Negi takes the Class 3A to Kyoto because he found out from Evangeline that his father would make visits there, and that would be some starting ground onto where to find him. Now, there have been some problems with Kyoto regarding magic users, specifically Eastern and Western magic users. There's some sort of divide or some bullcrap going on there that would actually make the field trip much less safe for Negi and his current companion Asuna. However, as in the volumes, he actually does get a few more partners, especially Setsuna Sakurazaki, who was Konoka's bodyguard, who would protect Konoka from a distance or wherever. She would actually like keep herself distant from her, even though they were childhood friends. But at the end of the series, she she stops being like that and becomes closer to Konoka and everyone else, almost to a point where it's been teased with some Yuri-ish moments, Konosetsu pairings and stuff. But Setsuna is a samurai girl. Most harems have that nowadays. Practices the same sword fighting style. I think it's called Shinmei Ryu. It's the same samurai style as Motoko's from Love Hina. Another character that Negi will form a Paxio with and will become a primary, character throughout the series is Nodaka Miyazaki. She's a bookworm. In fact, she was the one that Negi saved that accidentally got him exposed by Asuna with the magic. She has a crush on Negi, kind of a little shy, very, very shy person. In fact, earlier depictions of Nodaka, her hair would actually cover up her eyes. And when I first saw her, I recently finished watching Saber Marionette J at the time, and I looked at her and go, well, that's like a cute version of Luke's from the Saber dolls. Because she also had blue hair and her bangs covered up her eyes most of the time. She gets a Paxio, well, I wouldn't say accidentally because it was schemed by another character that I haven't really talked about, but he was introduced in Volume 3. Albert Chamomile, also known as Camo. He's a pet ermine that can talk. I think he used to be a wizard, but then he got turned into an animal because he was a show-off idiot and kind of a perverted dude. Well, him and Kazumi Asakura, another character who found out that Negi was a wizard, try this crazy plan to where they get most of the students in the hotel to try to kiss him. It's just an elaborate way of getting him some pack shows. And it was kind of zany and crazy and hectic because it also involved some paper double decoys. Well, at the end of the whole crazy hectic scenario, Nodaka didn't want to kiss her, but her friend Yue decided to trip her, and then the kiss became accidental, and she got the Paxio card. Also, at the time, Nodaka didn't know that Negi was a wizard. She had no idea what the hell the deal is with the card until she found out Asuna had a card, and she tried to use it itself, and she knows that her book has the ability to read minds and whatnot. And, fun little fact, I actually have the same date of birth as Nodaka Miyazaki, May 10th, go figure. That's pretty interesting. That's cool. But the Kyoto field trip arc gets more intense, gets more action-packed than the Evangeline arc, and it really does set up the fact that this is no longer just another harem manga. This is pretty much a fantasy shonen manga as well at this point. And not a bad thing. From a marketing perspective, shonens are definitely more successful than harems. And I'm honestly thinking that the harem genre is effing dead at this point. But shonen, even if I don't like most of the shows, they still stay strong for whatever reason. Especially something from Shonen Jump, like One Piece. So it was a smart decision for Akumatsu to slowly, under the radar, kind of morph it into a shonen series as well. Definitely the reason why I stayed with this series. Now, after the Kyoto arc, Negi decides to train harder, do more training as a wizard and stuff. He gets two different trainers. And this is something interesting about Evangeline. He actually has Evangeline train him with some of the magic abilities and stuff, which I thought was pretty cool. And he has another student of his train him in martial arts, and that student is Ku-Fei, or sometimes in the anime they call her Fei-Ku, but it's Ku-Fei. Early translations of Negima by Del Rey were kind of flawed, especially with Ku-Fei. She's Baka Yellow of the Baka Rangers, and the reason why her grades are so low is because she's a Chinese foreigner, and the Japanese language is just a little. She has difficulty with it. And the way she speaks, the way they translate it in this manga, it'll be easier if I just read one of the excerpts. I have volume 7 in my hand right now. This is how she talks. Negibozu is very, very quick at learning new thing is true. Normal person take maybe 1 month for learning new move for combat, but Negibozu learn in only 3 hours. How even is possible, I'm not sure. I apologize for that accent, but that's how I hear it in my head. Okay, I'm really sorry about that. If it ever came off as a little insensitive. But the next story arc, which wasn't very long at all, was the Wilhelm arc. I'm not going to say much about it, but the antagonist, obviously, is named after, the arc was named after him. Count Graf, God, I forgot the rest of his name. Count Graf von Wilhelm. It's a pretty long name, and this dude who is supposedly a German count, but in actuality he's a high-ranking demon who actually was one of the attackers of Negi's village. He was the one that turned everyone into stone. Can't remember why he chose to target Negi again. I guess is because he wanted to see his absolve or something like that. But the dude's a gentleman. He even though he's a high-ranking demon, he's actually like a respectable dude. He fights with a high level of respect and all that. And in that same arc, one of the antagonists from the Kyoto arc basically becomes a main character from this point forward, and that was Kotaro Inagami, a character that was completely left out in the. I don't think he was in any of the anime adaptations other than the Alba OVAs that came out after the second TV series. But he's a half-dog boy, and he just loves fighting for the sake of it. It entertains him and stuff, and he saw Negi as something of a rival. He's about the same age as him, too, and he does give me something of an Inuyasha vibe, but not too much, which is a good thing, because I did not like Inuyasha. I do not like the character. But, that was cool. Negi needed a bro character in this cast full of women. And that includes most of the men, too. I'm just kidding. Actually, most of the male characters in this anime are pretty manly. Especially one that shows up in the Magical World arc. Once I get around to talking about that. But Negi fights the demon. Even though he found out he was the attacker of his village, he doesn't finish him off, and then he disappears and says he will return one day. Spoiler alert, he doesn't. And then we get to the Mahora Festival arc, which may possibly be my favorite story arc in the entire series of Negima. In this story arc, during the festival, the tree that they have there, the World Tree, would have amplified magic, which only happens like once every 22 years. And the problem is that the staff of Mahora Academy have to be careful, because with that magic, if someone were to confess for love, they would just be hypnotized and lose their will for it, whatever. Actually happened once with Nodoka and Negi. Negi ended up falling for Nodoka after a misconfession, so they have to be careful about that. But turns out bigger and badder things were coming along that arc. Another antagonist is introduced, and it's another character from Class 3A, Chao Lingshin, who was just another typical, who came off to me as just another typical student with a lot of talents. She's a strong martial artist like Kufei. She's a scientist and a genius like Satomi Hakase. And she's a really good cook, just like Satsuki Yotsuba. But it turns out that there's something more about her with more ulterior motives. She wants to expose the idea that magic exists in the world, and it's no longer kept a secret. Because, well, actually, they never explained what happens in the future, and they kind of left that very vague and ambiguous. something that annoyed me for a while, because how am I supposed to know if she's doing the right thing, or if it's really that big of a deal? It could have been something very selfish of hers, or it could be something that could be world changing or world ending. Either way, like they left all those things very ambiguous, and they even had some like debates and discussions, like, Negi's father would probably side with Chow, if and have her plans come into fruition, stuff like that. But I was kind of annoyed at first, but I actually really liked that. And it turns out that in the Magical World arc, they actually explained what was going to happen in the future anyways, so you will eventually get an answer. Did I mention this arc lasts around 8 volumes in length? It's a pretty long arc, and they even they even put a tournament arc early in the beginning of the Mahora Festival arc. Lots of stuff happened in both terms of regular comedy and, shonen actiony stuff. Negi has planned a lot of events with individual students to attend and whatnot. However, due to oversight, he didn't really see. There were some schedule conflictions. And Chow, who started off pretty innocently, decided to help Negi out by giving him a time machine device called the. Man, I can't pronounce. I don't know if I can pronounce this correctly. The Cassiopeia. He gives him a time watch, and he can basically like go back in time to a certain to basically catch up on other events, which is cool. Now, then they had the tournament arc, and yeah, it's like any other shonen tournament arc, really, but it was still fun to read because action. It was exciting. Introduced a mysterious character who turns out to be part of Nagi's gang of heroes, the Crimson Ring or the Alarubra. It was pretty fun, and I heard, and from one of the behind the scenes stuff that was mentioned in the manga, the way the tournament bracket was set up was that Ken Akamatsu rolled some dice and he got some results. And for Negi, he fought Takamichi Takahata, one of the teachers I mentioned earlier. He turns out he's a magic user himself. Then he also fought Takane D. Goodman, which is she's a high school mage who was studying abroad at Mahora Academy. Then Negi also fought Setsuna Sakurazaki. And then he had a final battle with the mysterious character I mentioned. I think his name is Albiero Ima. Again, names, having a hard time pronouncing it. And he used his artifact, which allows him to not only transform into a certain individual, but he will also gather the memories and thought, personality of that person as he transforms. So this is a convenient way to have him somewhat visit his dad in the tournament arc. Now Negi loses, obviously, because Nagi's just still that more powerful, but I thought that tournament arc was still pretty good, because not only because of Negi's stuff, but you also got to saw Asuna versus Setsuna, Evangeline versus Setsuna, and then obviously Setsuna loses to Negi at the next match. But then you also had Kufei versus Mana Tatsumiya. Mana Tatsumiya. She's an exorcist. I think she's a priestess and an exorcist, and then it was revealed in the magical world that she's also a half demon. And she uses guns. They're apparently exorcism guns, but they actually look like real pew pew pow pow guns and rifles, which I thought was pretty cool. But when she fought Kufei in the tournament, she just used coins to start flickering them at rapid speed at her, and she even managed to break Kufei's arm in the tournament to the point where she had to be forced disqualification, which for me kind of sucked, because had she was still participating in the tournament, her next opponent would have been Kaede Nagase, who is another student of Class 3A, and she's a ninja. So you would have karate versus ninjutsu, and that didn't happen, which disappointed the crap out of me. So after the tournament arc, geez, I think I've put off reading Negima for a while because it's one of those stuff that, to me, it was one of those mangas that I was having a hard time putting down. And I was already caught up with the volumes released, and they take forever to release those volumes. Or maybe they didn't take forever, and I just didn't have the patience at the time. Which is why I would like wait for a long period of time and then buy a few a clutter full volumes, like at least 3 or 4, and then just continue reading from there. So that way I would have more to read than just, about an hour's worth of reading material. So I think I picked it back up in college around my second or third year in college, and I continued to read the Mahora Festival arc, and it turns it was some really interesting stuff. Well, Negi fought Chow for the first time. He was losing, and then it turns out it was an ambush for a going away party because they found her for Class 3A. They all thought she was moving away and stuff. And then Negi and the rest of his gang, the rest of the pack, his gang, the people who know his magic user, the people that help him out, they don't have a group. I don't think they formed the White Wing gang yet, or the Ala Alba group yet. But they train in a little place called Evangeline's Resort, which is very similar, which kind of looks like a more exotic version of Kami's Lookout, and it works almost the same way as the hyperbolic time chamber, where time is sped up inside that world as compared to the real world. So even though an hour may have passed, I could be wrong with the math here, in the real world, and there, it's probably like a few hours or possibly even a day. Well, while he was training there, and he was ready, and he and the gang were ready to combat Chow and prevent her plans coming into fruition, this is what she fucking does. She fucked with Negi's watch to where when they leave Evangeline's Resort, they actually jump ahead 8 days later to where she already completed her mission. And magic is exposed. Mahor Academy, the staff is all kinds of fucked, including Negi. They have to take responsibility for not stopping her. And, things are just going downhill from there. And I thought, wow, this freaking woman's like Ozymandias from The Watchmen. And yes, I've seen the movie Watchmen, but I haven't read the comic book yet. I don't know if I want to. But anyway. They escape imprisonment. They go back to time. They go back in time. I think they do this because of the World Tree's magic amplification powers. They teleport back to the final day of the Mahora Festival, and then they come up with this big, almost convoluted way to stop Chow. Chow Lingshin was gonna bring some giant robots into Mahora. I don't know. It's, like I said, her big plan was exposing magic all over the world, and the way she was doing it was she recorded footage of the tournament fights. Now, the tournament fights themselves weren't very restricted. People were using magic and crazy shit all the time, and people saw it. And she was gonna make the tournament bigger than that of Mahora's. She was gonna publicize that. And then I forgot what was she doing with those fucking robots? Okay, I had to skim it through. She was using the robots to capture certain points, so that way she would do a spell that would erase people's skepticism about the idea of magic existing. All right. So they tried to stop her, and the way they go through with this is that they get everyone in Mahora to play a little game, which is supposed to be like this big, to them it seems like a big giant game of, well, I don't want to say laser tag, but they think it's a big game, so they give them like magic guns and stuff as some part of a big Mahora-wide event. In actuality, it's something bigger than that, and if they lose, all hell will break loose. But that's how they were able to get everyone to Mahora to help, while at the same time hide the existence of magic or whatever. Then Negi has one big fight with Chow on top of an airship. And the fight itself was pretty awesome. Chow started to look more and more sinister, and it turns out she had fire elemental magic on her. It was a really fun fight. No one got killed because Negima, Shonen series does get a little darker at times. But the threat of like death hasn't really been like a thing all that much. There are risks, there are consequences of the risks, but I don't see a lot of I've seen, and there are a lot of injuries. I mean, people do get kicked around, people do get battered, bruised, beaten, but they don't get flat out murdered, which makes it not as dark as stuff like Dragon Ball Z, where people just get blown to bits every other time. Um, the darkest it ever got was that Negi took a spear in the back by Fate of Veracus, a major antagonist at the Mundus Magicus arc, who was also originally a minor character in the Kyoto Field Trip arc. But yeah, Negi wins. Satomi activate. Oh yeah, another thing I forgot to mention. Chao actually does have some people helping her out. Chachamaru, Evangeline's assistant, she was actually working with Chao. Satomi Hakase, the scientist who helped build Chachamaru, also helping out Chao. Mana Tatsumiya, same thing. So she's actually got a handful of people from Class 3A to help her out. And uh, Negi also gains a couple new allies. I can't remember if he got them before the Mahor Fest or during, but Haruna and Yue end up becoming his allies. Now, Haruna is an artist who's also a friend of Nodika's, who tries to help Nodika out with Negi, just like Yue does. Yue Ayase, again, I'll just say for a much later time about her. And he also Negi also has Chisame Hasegawa helping her out. Now, my experience with this character, since she really didn't do much in the Kyoto Field Trip arc, but she was there. She was always like a little grumpy and pissy, and she thinks everyone around him are idiots. So I didn't think much of her until I read Volume 2. Until I finally got around to reading Volume 2 after I read Volume 5. It turns out Chisame's got like a dual life thing going on. Like, she comes off as a regular disgruntled, middle school student, but on the internet, she's some crazy net idol. And when I first saw that, I was like, you're kind of a nutcase. I'm interested in you. And thank God, too, because she actually does become a mainstay ally in the as the series progresses. And she's also an expert hacker as well. She actually has a cyberspace battle with Chachamaru in order to prevent, public exposure to magic and stuff, to magic to the public, to the mainstream public, whatever. And yeah, overall, the story arc was great. It took a while for me to get used to the whole Chao's not revealing what happens in the future, so that we don't know how the hell, what the hell's gonna happen, blah, blah, blah. They, like I said, left that completely ambiguous, but I actually grew to, accept that. And it turns out Chao herself is a descendant of Negi's. Don't know how far down the lineage. She supposedly had a family album of his that would actually show who Negi ends up with in the future, and she calls it her deadliest weapon. This is when things start to go back to be a little more comedic, and to get rid of it. It is kind of dangerous, predicting the future. You really shouldn't know that because you can fuck things up. That's the message I got from reading that entire reading at the end of that story arc. And what's really funny is that Chisame, she was holding the book, and she's like, it would be really dangerous if somebody looked into this. Her eyes slowly move closer to the open page, to the book, and then Asuna fucking gouges out her eyes. But the way she does it is that she actually pokes through her glasses instead of under it over it. She just through it, breaks her glasses. It's just the funniest looking image I've seen. Oh, man. So Chao, because she lost, she returned to her own timeline. And that was kind of disappointing because I wanted her to stay after that. But, yeah. Even Negi wanted her to stay, but she didn't. Oh, well. The next story arc, which I liked, it lasted for 18 volumes. The last 2 volumes were more of a conclusion thing. The Mundus Magicus arc, where Negi and his companions journey to the magical world again to find more clues about his father. only to end up mislabeled as wanted terrorists because of an attack of an airport that was led by Fate of Vernicus, who was one of the minor characters from the Kyoto Field Trip arc, but now he's like a major antagonist in this particular arc. Now, not all of Negi's companions had Paxios with them, like Chachamaru and Seiya Asuka, or at least for now. But he has managed to gather a handful of allies, and some of them really didn't need Paxios. Like Kufei is a skilled martial artist that can handle her own, and same thing with Kaede with her ninjutsu skills. But the gang gets all separated. There's even some people from Mahora who are just following Negi around during the field trip who get accidentally stumbled onto the magical world, only to like get separated, and now they're like freaking slaves at some oh god, was it a hotel, a cafe or whatever. They end up being enslaved, and Negi actually has to like earn money to get their give them their freedom. So a lot of things happen in this arc, and I mean a lot, to the point where I can't remember everything vividly because I started reading the Mundus Magicus arc almost immediately after continuing from the Mahora Festival arc, so it was like a couple years back, so I don't know all the details all that well, but when I get closer and closer to the end, I can remember more vividly because I just finished reading this about several days ago. But things get crazy over the top. Like, Negi eventually learns some dark magic that Evangeline eventually learns, and because of that, he gets like white hair. He gets crazy powerful, and sometimes it would actually turn him into a monster if he ends up getting more emotionally unstable. But he learns to overcome it. But at the consequence, he's not even that human. He's supposedly immortal, some shit like that. And like I said, that's just one of the few over the top things. Another thing is that they introduce another member of Nagi's Crimson Wing group, Jack Rakan, who I really like. Out of all the Alaruba members, I like him the most because he is like manly as shit, and he is literally, Chisami literally describes him as the most broken video game character ever, because he is just that powerful, and he's pretty hilarious. He's fun, he's energetic, he's charismatic, he jokes around a whole bunch of times. And like I said, in this day and age where like most male anime characters I see don't have a lot of masculinity to them, it's nice to see him, and especially in Negima. Did not see that coming. Well, he helps train Negi some, and he even gives Negi the scroll that allows him to use the Magia Araba, which is the dark magic. And him and Negi, well, there was another tournament arc, but this one really I don't need to talk much about, because there wasn't that many interesting fights compared to the Mahora tournament arc. But Negi and Kotaro enter the tournament, and if you're wondering why they're doing all this, even though they're wanted criminals, they use age deceiving pills. They're like magical pills that can make you pop it in, you look 10 years younger or 10 years older. Negi would actually go around public looking about 5 to 10 years older, and he would actually take up his father's name, Nagi, as a pseudonym. He's actually done it before in the Mahora Festival arc when he was meeting one of the other students, Akko, during her little rock concert. Now, that's how him and Kotaro were able to go around public and even attend in this tournament. Now, the best part about the entire tournament actually was in Volume 27, because Jack himself and another character participated in this tournament. And they thought it would be kind of cool. They thought it would be a relief because, hey, if you win this tournament, you can use the money and you can free my students. And Jack's like, nope. No, I'm not even going to go easy on you. I'm going to kick your ass and win the prize money. And so because of this, Negi had to continue to train more with other members of in Ostia, other there were some other characters introduced. Like, more characters got introduced in the entire series, and some of them did get some development. They do have some backstories to them. But there were so many of them introduced that it really was hard for me to keep track. But he ends up training more in order to prepare to defeat Jack Rakan in the tournament. And he even forms a Paxio with one of the other magic users, Theodora. Except he gets a Paxio card, and it's like he only uses it once too because it's that much of a game breaker. But his artifact was that he can actually use other artifacts of the Paxios he's formed with his group. So he can get Asana's sword or Nodika's book, and he only used it once. He never used it again. I forgot if he disabled it himself or they just kind of dropped in. Ken Akamatsu dropped in, just never mentioned it again because they thought it was too overpowered of a spell. But he uses it, and like I said, the entire volume was just nothing but Negi and Kotaro versus Jack, and I forgot who the other guy was, but he was apparently a powerful magic user from some years back. They fought, and it was fight, beat the crap out of each other, and they were playing the typical shonen stuff. Like, apparently there's a 20 count out limit that if you're unconscious for 20 seconds and not 10, then you're automatically, then you lose. Now, when I saw Negi knock out Jack the first time, they started counting down. Everyone's like, they were just playing those bits so much, man. One of the things that bugged me for a lot of shonen manga and anime is that whenever a character is knocked out or incapacitated, everyone, the winning side always gets so cheery and happy. It's like, oh yeah, you defeated him, good job. They think it's the end, but then all of a sudden the opponent gets up and he's like, no, I ain't dead yet, fucker. We're still gonna continue this for 5 more episodes. Well, they did that shit with Negi. He knocks out Jack first time. Everyone's like, all right, he did it. Wow. I'm like, he is going to get up at like the very last second, right? And what do you know? He did. And he starts doing shit. He starts effing up Negi. Everyone's like, oh no, Negi, he's probably going to lose. No, he gets up to it. And he starts throwing a much bigger attack back at him. And it got to the point where both Negi and Jack, they just started fighting and beating the crap out of each other. And this time they were just doing it out of sheer enjoyment to the point where the fight ended in a draw, which I thought was a really hilarious way to end that particular, fight. That was really interesting to say the least. So Negi wins. Jack gives him the rest of the prize money, and they free his other students who were in prison who were enslaved. I think they were Ako Izumi, Akira Kochi, I think Makie and Natsumi were also there. But yeah, they're all free. They now join them. They know that magic exists. They eventually have to form Paxios. Now with Natsumi's case, she actually has a crush on Kotaro. So she doesn't form a Paxio with Negi. She does with Kotaro in this series. Unlike the rest of the anime, unlike the other anime series, Natsumi does form a Paxio with just Negi. And after that happened, the Negi reunites with Yue, who unfortunately suffers from an amnesia, and she doesn't recognize her friends and classmates. She suffered it ever since the airport attack. Now, here's a problem with giving characters amnesia. In most other films and shows, whatever, I really don't mind it if the beginning starts out with the main character having amnesia, doesn't remember anything, because it adds an interesting mystery layer to the character that will hopefully be further unraveled as the plot progresses, and I usually like that. But my problem is that when you have a character who's pretty established, or you already know about and all that, and all of a sudden they suffer from amnesia, it just becomes a little frustrating to me. But in Yue's case, with her, it's almost like they look like they were about to make a wrong step with her, and then all of a sudden they don't. They actually make the right step. Yue gets taken in by some magician knight academy located in some area called Ariadne, or I think that's how you pronounce it. Ariadne. It's spelled Ariadne. As she goes to some magic school and she befriends some people, some half beastkin and other students like Collet, and a bunch of other characters whose names escape me at the moment. But yeah, she actually becomes more and more of a badass mage that way, and she eventually does get her memories back, or at least most of them, when she reunites with Class 3A. And she also finally gets that other part of the amnesia is another part that was blocked out of her memory is that it turns out Yue, even though she's a really good friend of Nodika's, she also unfortunately has a crush on Negi, which was revealed at the Mahor Festival arc. And she really hated herself for it because, she would, if she ended up falling for Negi, she would see it as something of a huge betrayal to her friend. So something of a love triangle element added in there as well. Okay. Okay. Let's see. What else do I want to talk about? I really didn't want to do a complete point by point plot synopsis, but I guess I'll explain the whole overall part of the Mundus Magicus arc, or the villain's motivations. Fate apparently wanted to the population of the Mundus Magicus is somewhere in the 500 millions, and they only plan to save a small fraction of it, which would be nothing but humans. Everyone else would be left to be incinerated, because it turns out that the magical world is an illusion, and they've discovered this from one of the other members of Nagi's gang, who is the Governor General of Astia, Kurt Godel. And there now Negi, Negi just said, "Screw that! We're going to save everyone. I know of a way." And they've actually had to fight off the Governor General, and then they eventually had to fight off. Then they eventually get their way to the tower and fight off Fate and his servants. And it also turns out throughout the entire time, both Asuna and a friend of Negi's who shows up, Anya Kokolova, I think that's how you pronounce her name, they were captured during the whole split up routine, and the Asuna everyone thought was with them the whole time was actually Shiori disguised as Asuna, and she uses almost the same disguise magic as Albiero did in the tournament arc. Now, they do eventually find out that Asuna is a fake, but Negi still allows them to accompany them as Asuna, because the spell actually affects her memory. Noda could try to find out if she really was Asuna or not, and using the artifact book, and the book clearly has Asuna going, "Well, why is everyone attacking me? I am the real Asuna. What are you doing?" But the way Negi found out was that he formed a pact shield with her, and it turns out that her real identity was exposed. Well, they show up at the tower. Lots of fights ensue. Negi gets into a big fight with Fate. Everyone else is split up to fight off other antagonists. Another Kyoto recurring antagonist was Tsukuyomi, who has this crazy, psychotic, disturbing obsession with both Setsuna and Konica. So Setsuna had been stuck fighting her. And then another student of 3A shows up. It was Zazie Rainy Day. She was working for Fate. But then it actually turns out that was Zazie's older sister, and the real Zazie was actually trying to show Negi what happened if he succeeded. Or if Fate succeeded. See, Fate was going to transport all the survivors into a weird dimensional heaven to find their eternal happiness. An example of Negi's is that he's with his father and classmates, and as well as his mother. They actually start explaining stuff about his mother in this story arc. but the funny thing is, they never explain what happened to her after the events of 20 years prior to the events of Negima. We don't. I don't even know if she's dead or alive at this point, and they never answer that, unfortunately. But but Zazie shows her this with her Pacquiao. Zazie shows Negi this, called Negi her, sorry, with her Pacquiao, and um and he said, you know, I'm still gonna stop fate, and she's like, okay, sure, but my twin sister, she's probably gonna prevent you, and then Mana's stuck fighting Zazi's twin sister, which they decided to call her Puyo because she would always end her sentences with saying Puyo. So a lot of things happen. Like almost every other page, giant explosions all over the place because of crazy magical spells and stuff. Um, and a bunch of other characters start showing up, like Dynamis and the other Avernus characters who have other elemental affinities. But then Fate decides to let Negi try his plan, and then all of a sudden the ultimate villain shows up. His name is the Life Maker, and the best describe him is that you could pull up a command prompt, type up your name, Kill, enter. Like he had like when he showed up, he just instantly erased people in the who are linked to the magical world. Um, just like that, and he did that to a few characters already prior to the big fight. But don't worry, they get rescued later. And Jack Recon himself was one of them, but he actually just used willpower to come right back, which just shows how crazy awesome this guy is, even though he is overpowered as hell. Well, at the end of the day, Negi succeeds, rescues Asuna, then saves the magical world, and even brought some of the people who were defeated. They got restored back into the world. Um, and then the last two volumes kind of returns to harem form. Um, some gags, and then he forms more Paxios, like with Ayaka Yukihiro, who has the craziest crush on Negi, almost stalkerish to that point. She's the class representative too, and she also rivals with Asuna in a few things. And I'm gonna like save everything I want to talk about regarding the ending, but overall, like Negima loved this series. Definitely a fun experience, fun little reading experience. I mean, there were some things I really didn't like about it. Like even when I was in high school, a lot of the etchy elements really bugged the crap out of me. Especially in the Wilhelm arc, it actually it made me uncomfortable, especially since when I read manga, I always like read it like 5 minutes before class or whatever. I just read it privately on my own, which is weird. It's just a habit of mine. You know, if I have like 30 minutes to spare before class starts or before I have to do something else, I would always just pop open the book and just start reading. That's how I read manga back then. What other things can I talk about? Well, the another con for me was that in the later volumes, things got really wordy. Like there's just a lot of dialogue, which doesn't bother me. But there were some texts actually got so small, I had to squint looking at them, and that it was just it was just like wow why. And I'm a guy who likes to pay attention to detail. I gotta like read every little thing, even if it's not really that important line of dialogue. You know, you don't want to miss anything. The art style itself, uh, I like it. It changed. The art style changed over time. It got more and more refined. But what I really like about reading a long running manga series is that the art style will gradually change, but you won't notice it or even care. But then if you like look back and read an earlier volume, you're like, wow, the art style was completely different back then. How did I not notice this? Now, it definitely did get a little more refined and find more of a tune-up. I mean, it wasn't that big of a change compared to other things I've read, but it was slightly noticeable. Some of the characters that I do like in Negima. I'll start with Yue Ayase because I didn't talk about her much. I didn't think I would like her all that much. She just came off as like a stoic, nonchalant, frank character, but she became more and more badass. And according to a character ranking poll, she actually ended up being number one at the series conclusion because of all her times with Ariadne and the fact that she became a badass, magician. But she's a character that I would like to hang out with at a bar because she likes to drink bizarre juices and stuff. That I'm thinking, man, if she hit the drinking age of 21, what the hell would she like? She would probably nut up and drink some of the craziest drinks in some of the most craziest bars. But but she's an awesome character. I thought the whole her having a crush on Negi thing would like really annoy me because when I first heard that I was like, oh Jesus. Well, a lot of characters eventually have a crush with Negi, but with her case it was really unusual because she knew her friend Nodoka had a crush, and I was like, oh geez, this is not going to end well, will it? But surprisingly, Nodoka and Yue like came to agreements of a friendly rivalry for Negi's affections. Another character I mentioned I liked Evangeline and Chachamaru. Chao Lingshin. I didn't think she would be good antagonist material, but I was wrong. She was a real badass. In fact, she probably could have gone through with her plan if she didn't if she didn't follow like a code of respect and conduct. Like she the only reason why she never gone through with her plans is because Negi defeated her in a one-on-one match in the grand finale, and therefore she goes by her word and said, you know what, you win. Oh well, back to my timeline. Now she does appear at the end of the series one more time. So that much I really liked. What other characters? Let me just take a look at the Class 3A chart. Oh, regarding the Class 3A chart, Negi was given a chart of all his students, and they have images, and they even mention their club activities on the bottom and stuff. They show it at the end of every volume, and sometimes there would be like little marks and changes that Negi would put to help memorize his classmates and stuff. Now, funny thing is, that's like you could also see the art quality change a little there because even though he adds new notes and stuff, they never change the art style of the character designs' faces. So you actually do see a drastic difference between the art currently and the art that was used for the Class 3A chart. Well, I already talked about Kufei, the Chinese martial artist. I talked a bit about Mana, the exorcist gun bunny, as most people would call it, the marksman. Let's see. There's Seo Isaka, who's the ghost girl who mysteriously died back in 1940, but she doesn't know how she died. In the Magical World arc, since her soul was kind of bounded by the school, in the school, they actually had her possess a little plush doll of herself, and that's how she was able to go around the Magical World arc. And she's actually an assistant to Kazumi Asakura. So yeah. If there's any character I wish had more, Chisame Hasegawa, I forgot to mention. Yeah, I like her too. Her role gets more and more prominent during the Mundus Magicus arc, which is one of the things I really liked about that story arc. Like my favorite scene with her involvement was when Negi was doing his training to get his hands on the Magia Eriba, which is it's basically dark magic that Evangeline uses. And it was a scroll that Evangeline created with a little dummy copy inside it of her that Jack Rakan has, that she meant, I think he took it from her from a bet or something. And he gave Negi the scroll to see whether or not he wants to train under that kind of magic. Negi agrees, however, there's a little catch to it. Negi's spirit gets trapped into this scroll, and he has to basically fight there to survive. And if he survives, well, he's a little more powerful. And if he doesn't, well, he just plain out dies. And Chisame is given the task to whether or not she should just destroy the scroll, which is his only way of escaping. But if she destroys it, he won't get the power. However, if she takes too long and Negi doesn't seem to be doing a good job at it, he'll die. So Chisame's given this really hardcore dilemma, very problematic for her, and a very tough. It required a lot of tough decision making, which is actually something I did not expect out of that particular character, who's basically kind of a minor character most of the time, and even in her role in the Ala Alba gang, she's basically just plain old support. But this is something I expected they would write Asuna for in this scenario, but instead she gets the role to do something like that. About that magical arc, overall, wasn't as good as Mahor Fest, and it was getting crazy and over the top. But I always thought I always thought the series was running its conclusion, or somewhere it had to end there, because everyone was getting godlike at that point. So overall, I actually did like it, despite how crazy it got. Now, the one character I wish they had more focus on, they didn't really have a lot of focus on, is Satsuki Yotsuba, who is also the one of the chefs that help out Chow's shop, who actually runs it after Chow leaves to the future. Um, she happens to have a high level of respect by everyone in Mahor, to the point where she says, "Hey, don't fight near my restaurant," and everyone's like, "Okay." Even Evangeline does not dare cross her. And I'm kind of disappointed because, I don't know, she just sounds like this character would be so fucking hardcore had she formed a pact shield with Negi or something in the series. But they didn't do a whole lot. They had like one focus chapter on her, and she shows up from time to time. And I think she's aware about the world of magic, because she helps out Takamichi at one point. Um, but yeah, like that's a character I wish they definitely had more focus on. I was a little disappointed with. So that is just a small portion of Negima right there. I tried to sum up a lot of the story arcs and whatnot, but I'm obviously leaving out a lot of details and even a lot of characters and stuff. And I know I've been pretty critical about the ecchi stuff where I was rolling my eyes at most of the moments, but that doesn't mean I really hate it entirely. It's not as, stupid as Iki Tosen, because with Ken Akumatsu, there was a lighthearted charm to it, and most of the stuff was actually played for laughs and even gets poked fun of in itself. Whereas Iki Tosen, they have panty shots all the time, and yet they're trying to act serious and stuff. Now that happens too in Negima, but not as often as you think. And yeah, I did like some of the moments. There are some moments in the manga that made me laugh. Not as much as the Studio Shaft anime adaptation, but I found some really entertaining moments. One particular moment for me, I'm going to make it for an example, is that everyone in Mahor Academy Class 3A, they have like a wide variety of designs and body types. Even though they're all supposed to be like equally, well, most of them, it turns out some of them are actually older than they look, but most of the characters are supposed to be around the same age. But some of them will look older than they should be, or even younger. And this was actually poked fun of at one particular gag. Kaede Nagase, the ninja chick who supposedly looks way older than 15, she tries to buy a movie ticket at a theater and tries to use her student ID for a discount. And the ticket booth lady looks at her and goes, "You're not a middle school student. Get the hell out of here." And then she freaking gives her the shaft on that. And Mana herself chuckles, but she ended up having the same. She ended up getting screwed as well. They go back to it later, and they use the age deceiving pills I mentioned earlier to make themselves look younger. But it turns out Kaede just spent more money on that than just buying a ticket without the discount, so she kind of screwed herself over. I could go on and on, but that would take me 3 more hours, and this vlog has been kind of a pain to record. But yeah, this is Negima. I really love this series. It was a good fun read for 7 years. I don't know if I'm ever going to have that same experience again. And yeah, if this somehow motivates you to check the series out, it is being re-released in omnibus editions, like three volumes are like being compiled as to one by Kodansha Comics, and I think they've improved the translation in some of the earlier volumes because that was like one of the biggest problems. But if this somehow motivates you to check it out, be warned. Like I said, lots of ecchi fan service. I mentioned the back shields and stuff. This is made by the guy who made Love Hina after all. But overall, I really, really like this manga series. So yeah, that's all I gotta say. I am going to make a follow-up video, and it's going to be talking about the ending and what I